Your tech resume is garbage. How do I know? For over 22 years, I've been a software engineer, tech interviewer, and career coach. And during that time, I've reviewed a lot of resumes. Most of them were terrible. You might think your resume is great, but if you've been struggling to land roles in this terrible tech job market, your resume might not be as good as you think it is. Now, I'm no pro resume writer, but my resume was good enough to get me into my dream job at Google. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to write a winning resume by showing you how I would rewrite my own, and I'm going to do it from scratch. Having a good tech resume didn't used to matter all that much a few years ago. I'm talking about before the dark times of the pandemic, mass tech layoffs, and AI. By just having the right keywords on your resume, you could easily get recruiters reaching out to you from companies big and small. But it's 2025, and nobody really wants to hire you, sort of. To even get attention these days, engineers actually have to have good resumes and solid LinkedIn profiles. And even then, you might get auto-rejected. So what's the point of having a good resume then? Simple. A good resume makes it easier for companies who actually want to hire you to find you. And getting those details from your resume and onto your LinkedIn profile will make you way more findable. But let's talk about why you might struggle to understand why your resume is bad. Firstly, most of us don't spend a lot of time looking at resumes. The few we look at are probably just meh. Maybe you've compared your resume to a few of your friends and coworkers and figured that yours is good enough. But when you've seen as many resumes as I have, it becomes much easier to figure out what makes great resumes stand out. On top of that, recruiters and hiring managers who review hundreds to thousands of resumes every year are trained to look for specific things that differentiate good candidates from mediocre ones, and are really good at reading between the lines. Another reason it's hard for us to see issues with our own resume is because all the context around everything we've ever done is in our head. For you, the bullet points on your resume are more than just text on a page. They're memories and lived experiences. You know how hard you worked and the challenges you had to overcome to get things done. You really believe that you'd be the best person for the job you're applying for because you are intimately acquainted with your own work ethic and your past successes. But getting this information out of your head and onto the resume and then into the brain of your reader is extremely difficult. And related to my previous point about context, we're also sometimes guilty of presuming too much of our readers. Perhaps we expect them to know how difficult our job was because of where we worked, or to spend a good amount of time reading all 3 pages of our resume. In reality, none of this is generally true. If your reader isn't hooked in 5 to 7 seconds, they've already moved on to the next resume. They won't know or care about where you worked if you don't tell them why what you did actually mattered. And almost nobody's gonna give you any useful feedback to help you improve your resume unless your reader is someone you're paying to read it. Now, your resume can look great, have really impactful numbers, and feature a fantastic list of companies. But if it doesn't match the requirements of the job description, your resume would only be a little more useful than toilet paper. Tailoring your resume to the job description should be like taking an open book quiz. All the answers are already there. You just have to know where to look. If you're constantly evaluating your own resume apart from job descriptions, then you're only getting part of the picture. So at this point, I hope I've convinced you that writing a great resume isn't easy. For the rest of this video, I'm going to focus on showing you how to start writing a great resume. There are 6 things a solid resume should have. Let's walk through each of these one by one. The easiest part of your resume should be your name and contact info. At minimum, provide your full name, email address, a best number to contact, and a mailing address, or at least the city and state. The contact section is also a great place to put your LinkedIn profile, and if you have one, your GitHub profile as well. But be careful here. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date and that your GitHub profile is well organized. This point deserves its own video, but that's for another time. Let me know in the comments if you want to cop that. The professional summary is your first opportunity to speak to your reader and add color to your resume. In 2 sentences, you need to paint a picture of what you want your reader to see in your resume. It's almost like a thesis that the rest of your resume must prove. You should definitely write this part of your resume last. There's nothing worse than writing a bunch of fluff that you haven't backed up in your professional experience section. And as my mama used to say, don't write a check that your butt can't cash. The next major section is the skills section. This is where you will list out your technical skills and your soft skills. There's no need for fancy bar charts, spark lines, or an elaborate rating system. Your resume isn't a Yelp review. Just list out the names of programming languages, platforms, tools, and general skills as they match with the job description for which you're applying. The most important part of your resume is the experience section. As the name implies, this is where you put all of your professional experience, which begs the question, what do we mean by professional experience? That means work you were paid to do using both your technical and your soft skills in order to achieve a result for someone else. Volunteer work, academic, and personal projects do not go in this section. And you know what else doesn't go in this section? Your previous job descriptions. Rather, your experience section is about one thing and one thing only, your impact. You need to spell out how you used your skills to make money, save time, or increase productivity for your organization or your customers. For this, I love the resume formula. I talk about this a lot, so I'll drop a link in the description to an article I wrote on how to use the resume formula to write a winning resume. And of course, you'll see it later in action when I start writing my own resume. Now, not every resume will need a project section, but it can be useful particularly for folks who either don't have a lot of career experience or who are career transitioners from another field outside of tech. Although this section may contain work that isn't considered professional experience, you should absolutely think about it the same way. Make it a point to use the resume formula for your projects the same as you would for your professional experience. Remember, just because you weren't paid doesn't mean your work wasn't impactful in some way. For most people, the education section will be the last section on your resume. This will likely be the least important part of your resume as well, depending upon the role you're applying for. If you are still in school or a recent grad, your education section belongs at the top of your resume above your skills. That's to let recruiters know that you should be considered for internships and new grad positions. List all of your post-high school education, degrees, and certifications in order of most recent to the least. And unless required, or unless your GPA was really good, feel free to just leave it off your resume. Okay, that covers all the stuff we need on the resume. It's time to dive in and start writing my resume from scratch.
For me, writing a resume involves 3 very important and crucial steps. I'd like to break it down like this: read, reflect, and write. Let's look at each step of the process, starting with read. So I like to start by carefully reading a few job descriptions for roles that could be a good fit, and then build the best resume I can that would fare well for all 3 positions. This might sound hard, but it's not too difficult. The key is to pick positions that are very similar to each other so that your resume is within the ballpark. Every role I've chosen is specifically for a senior software engineering position. I could apply for other kinds of roles like software developer, programmer analyst, or even developer relations, but these roles may require a different kind of resume than the one I would write specifically for a software engineer position. Now that I've got my job descriptions picked out, it's time to read. For these job descriptions, I'm looking for 3 things: hard technical skills, soft skills, and what I call the abilities, a list of product qualities that the company or team really want to emphasize. To get myself set up for success, I've copied the job descriptions into a separate doc that I can print and work with physically. So I've actually printed it out here, and I have all the job descriptions lined up with some consistent formatting, which is going to help me as I review the keywords and phrases. I'm actually going to use 3 different color highlighters. I'll use blue for the soft skills and soft qualities, the orange highlighter for technical skills, and then I'll rely on yellow for any of the product abilities that I talked about earlier. All right, so right off the bat, I'm seeing that for this position, they want engineers who have a passion for building high performance, low maintenance, 0 downtime software. So those are really important product qualities that we need to keep in mind, and that I should probably speak to if I've had experience building software like that. I'm also seeing that the word collaborative is probably going to show up a million times. Collaboration is very important as a software engineering skill, as a software engineering soft skill. So I'm no doubt going to see collaboration all over the place in all of these job descriptions. Now you may be wondering, I could just feed this to AI and to something like ChatGPT or Gemini and have it parse through and pick out important words and phrases. I'm choosing to do it myself though, at least for the first few job descriptions, so that I can really critically think about what I'm reading and start thinking about how my own experience highlights one or more of these soft skills, technical skills, or product qualities. Just know that even though I'm separating these skills within or between soft skills and technical skills and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that they don't blend across different sections depending upon what it is. Things like security, there is a soft skills component to like being security minded and thinking about that wisely, but you also need to know security protocols. I always laugh when I see stuff like fast-paced startup-like environments because that could mean that they're getting ready to run you ragged and you just need to be prepared to establish your limits and boundaries. So that's something that I would ask maybe the recruiter about or someone else who maybe works on the technical team about things like work-life balance and how that is viewed culturally within the organization. All right, I'm pretty much good on this position. Time to start on the next one. Another word that will show up a lot in job descriptions, especially in big tech companies, is this idea of impact. Everything is measured by that. Your career success, all of that is determined by how impactful you are and your ability to measure that impact and communicate that impact. Ownership and showing initiative are two other really important qualities that you need to have as a software engineer in general, but also, and especially when you're thinking about a big tech company, because you are entrusted with much more and with huge scale, and being able to own an ambiguous problem and to use critical thinking and good problem solving skills to really drive that from ideation to solution. But you can't wait for people to tell you what to do. You have to figure out what needs to be done and then do it. Let me show you a trick that I use all the time when I'm going through job descriptions. I just came across the word ambiguous a couple of times. What I want to do is use the find shortcut to just see if I can spot matches and more specifically their counts. So ambiguity appears 4 times in the document. Repetition matters to me because that tells me that it's something that I should prioritize. Something that is repeated often is more important, generally speaking, than something that isn't repeated at all. The word design shows up 15 times throughout all 3 of the job descriptions. That's a really important senior software engineering skill. One of the things I'm gonna wanna demonstrate on my resume more than anything else probably is the ability to design solutions and get them implemented. Okay, I've taken some time to write down the soft skills, technical skills, and then product qualities that I talked about earlier. I want to take the job descriptions just as they are, and I want to ask ChatGPT to generate this same list and see what it comes up with. I'm here on ChatGPT, let's figure this out. Okay, so here's the prompt that I have. Derive a list of keywords and phrases that would be good to include on my resume. The keywords should be grouped into 3 categories: soft skills, technical skills, and product qualities. Please sort the list of keywords according to the frequency of appearance across job descriptions. Here are the job descriptions to consider, and then I've pasted the job descriptions just right into the prompt. So let's see what it comes up with. I like the ChatGPT list, so I'm actually gonna keep a reference to that in the same document just so I can have it handy. Okay, I'm done reading the job descriptions and I know what things I need to include in my resume to stand out as a good candidate. Now it's time to reflect. I want to carefully examine my work experience and find areas of impact that reflect how well I've demonstrated the skills and abilities highlighted in the job descriptions. Now there's 2 kinds of impact that I want to focus on. First, I look for direct impact related to making money, saving time, or driving efficiency. But in cases where I can't tie my impact to one of those things, then I will look for indirect impact, where maybe I did something that led to any positive result, even if it didn't directly make money or save time for the organization. Honestly, this is the hardest part of writing a resume. That's because unless you spent time updating your resume well before you needed it, you're probably trying to collect data well after your accomplishments. That's why you should always document your accomplishments and keep your resume updated, especially when you're not looking for a job. So where do you find these impact numbers? Here are some sources I recommend. First, there are external sources. That includes press releases, blogs, and news articles. You can check product brochures if you worked on a public-facing product. The social media profiles and resumes of your coworkers can also be a great place to snag some data. If your company has quarterly earnings calls, you should be listening to those and just getting an idea of what they're talking about. Also, for publicly traded companies, review the company's 10K filing. They've got to do it every year, and you can gain some very useful information. Last but not least, don't forget to use LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini to aid in your research. For internal sources, your manager or your coworkers are going to be helpful there. If you have a product manager, you can also ask them questions. If your organization has all hands meetings, you should definitely attend those, be ready to ask questions and to think through the impact of your organization. And then last but not least, analytic dashboards. A quick note on consulting internal sources. You should always assume that any data that you work with internally is confidential and proprietary. You must ask permission if you want to use certain metrics on your resume, or at least obscure them in such a way that they don't reveal any confidential information. This is one reason why I like to use percentages or multipliers when I can't share real numbers. And remember, once you've left a role, you probably will lose all privileges to even access this information. So it's better to document what you can while you can. Okay, so I finished making some initial notes and just jotting down things as it comes to memory. I've organized my experience in a couple of different ways. So first things first, I've started just by grouping things by company. And then within each company, I think about the projects that I've done. What were the qualities that I wanted to reflect? Then what were the metrics? So under qualities, I'm thinking about those technical skills, the soft skills, and the productilities, and just trying to think of where do they fall within my experience. There are all kinds of numbers that are useful. Some of those numbers are big and other numbers are small. 0 can be a very important number, depending upon what it refers to, right? And so there's work that I've done that required 0 downtime. So the system had to be robust and reliable enough that if I made changes, things wouldn't go kaput. There are different orders of magnitude that I need to use, so I can't always use precise numbers. I can't maybe tell you, the largest data set that I've worked on, but I can tell you that it was millions of rows large. It was probably much bigger than that, but I love the metrics for my time at Junction Solutions working on e-commerce storefront. And the reason why I love these metrics is because I didn't compute these at all. Another colleague of mine's put these numbers on their LinkedIn profile. I borrowed those numbers because we were working at the company during the same time. You don't always have to go invent your own numbers or find your own numbers. You can find stuff that's already publicly published, even by your coworkers or by the company, and then get that data. So it's nice. As you can see from the data that I've collected here, I've got all kinds of metrics. I've got numbers around like percentages, downtime numbers. I've got units of scale, like millions of rows. I've got things like multipliers, 3x, 4x. I've got dollar amounts. I've got just a whole host of things that help to illustrate the impact that I've had. One of the early lessons that I learned in my career is that you cannot manage what you can't measure, and that includes your career. You cannot manage your own work life and your career if you don't understand the kind of measurable impact that you're making and the progress towards your goal. So hopefully you have career plans and you have ideas about where you want to go in life, and being able to be data-driven will help you in many more areas than just your resume. Okay, I think this is a really good start. I'm gonna go do some more research and just get some more numbers together, and the next time that we meet, let's start writing the resume. That's good to me. Okay, I'm ready to start writing some real resume bullets. Now for this, I'm going to use the resume formula. The resume formula is very simple. I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. And so what I want to do for every single bullet of my resume is talk about what did I accomplish, how did I measure it, and then what did I do in order to accomplish that result. I'm just going to start at the top and think about a time in my career where I've demonstrated clear leadership. And I want to focus specifically on technical leadership because I think that that's going to be attractive for someone looking for a senior software engineer. Okay, let's take a look at this bullet that I've put together. So I talk about the fact that I led the implementation of this data source editor for a dashboarding tool that we used at Google that was used by up to 90% of Google's workforce at one time or another. I also decided to include in here the idea of ownership because ownership is very much related to leadership. That's really how technical leadership is demonstrated. I've also added in parenthesis some technologies that maybe I don't talk about in the sentence description. Okay, let's keep going. So I feel pretty good with the bullets that I've typed out here. It's time to see how I did. So in order to get this resume into its finished format, I'm going to use a resume template. I don't like making my own resume template if there are like thousands that already exist that do the job. I don't need anything fancy, so I'm just gonna borrow a resume template that I found from Tanika Askew on Twitter. I definitely recommend that you follow her. She's always dropping amazing insights into positions and job opportunities, so you should definitely follow Tanika Askew on Twitter. I'll link her account in the description so that you can follow. Here's that resume template that I mentioned. As you can see, it's very, very simple. Just name, contact information. You can see all the sections that we talked about earlier. They're all here. There's even some instructions on how to use some AI prompts to fill in the information. I don't want to do that, not me personally. Something you may choose to do, but I prefer to be much more hands-on with my resume so that I know what I'm speaking to and can stand by every single word. One thing I really like about this template is that it minimizes vertical white space. So you don't want a lot of white space on your resume because that's space that actual information could go into. So I can pack a lot of information in here without needing to use a bunch of pages. There's really no magic here. All I did was took the resume bullets that I typed up earlier and put that into the document. So I've made maybe some minor tweaks here and there, but as you can see, actually putting together the actual resume once I have all the data is easy. It's just formatting at this point. There's a couple of checks that I want to do. First thing that I want to do is use ChatGPT to just compare the resume to the job descriptions and see how close they are. The second thing that I want to do is use that SkillSyncer tool that I was talking about earlier just to see if I can get a score on how well this job matches other job descriptions that I've seen before. Okay, so here's the prompt that I came up with. Given the attached resume, tell me how well it matches the following job description. So I've uploaded a PDF version of my resume and then I've pasted in the job descriptions. Of course, I could do it in opposite order, but this is just the way I chose to go with it. Let's see what it says. I see that for the first position, it detects a little bit of weakness with security protocols, especially in the more recent roles, which, hey, that's fine. There are some things that I can do to adjust for that. I think the criticism is largely fair. I do have some of the things that are missing here, and it's just up to me to make sure that I include those details in my resume so that it's more clear. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to show you. I've asked ChatGPT to write a 2 to 3 sentence professional summary based on my resume. I could, of course, handcraft a professional summary, but I feel like this is one of the excellent uses for AI and LLMs in terms of resume preparation. Remember, we write the professional summary after we've written the resume. That way it truly summarizes the things that we're going to talk about in our professional experience. So looking at this professional summary, it's not too bad. It obviously needs some cleanup. I can remove my name and some of these other details that aren't as relevant. I'm gonna tighten this up a bit to about 2 sentences and try to remove as much of the fluff as I can so that I can get down to something that's really lean and useful. I like this professional summary better, more tight-knit, more succinct, does what I needed to do, truly summarizes, and without too much fluff. So yeah, it's not bad. I think we're ready to roll. All right, now let's run it through SkillSyncer and see how I do. Using the tool is pretty easy. You just put in the company name. We'll go with Amazon since I happen to be applying for that one, and senior software engineer. All right, so I'm pasting the job description now. And one of the things that's interesting about using SkillSyncer and something that I've noticed is that I need to be careful to include only the parts of the job description that are relevant for the assessment that I want. So I want to specifically measure up against the description of the role, basic qualifications, preferred qualifications, any educational requirements, all of that stuff. Now I want to include my resume. And in this case, I'm just gonna paste the text right in. All right, here we go. All right, not too bad. I've got a score of 62. It recommends that I have a score of 80, so I'm not too far off from this particular position. I can obviously go and add some of the things that are missing, but one thing I'm gonna try is using the auto optimize feature. And with the auto optimize feature, what it will do is suggest some modifications to the resume to make it a higher match. So let's just, without me even writing anything else, see what happens when I click Auto Optimize. Auto Optimize is a paid feature of SkillSyncer. They do give you free credits, and they're not sponsoring this video at all. Holla at me though. Just by using the Auto Optimize button, I was able to bump up my score from 63 and some change or whatever it was to now 83%. That's pretty good. And as I'm looking at this, it's made some changes that I can't really get on board with. So it added, curiously, C++, and I haven't had any professional experience with C++, so that's not gonna work for me. But it does recommend adding things like developer tool and automation and all that other stuff. So that could be useful. Technical, yeah. At this point, it's just basically stuffing keywords into my skill section, which I guess is okay. I might tweak it a little bit because they're just not things that I would really say of myself. So I'll play around with this a little bit more. Looking at the Geico position now, and as you can see, I get a 76 just right out the gate after making some changes for the Amazon position. That's a whole lot better. We can probably optimize that a little bit more and get that easily to 80, but I'm pretty pleased with what I'm seeing here. I mean, we're pretty much to the finish line. And we're done with the resume. I've really enjoyed doing this and putting it together, but I want to hear from you. Does this look like something that you could do? Do you think that I did a decent job? I'm gonna leave a link to the resume in the description, so let me know if there's things that maybe you would improve or if there's tips and tricks that I didn't mention. This has been quite an enjoyable experience. I'm really grateful to be able to share this with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, I'm Anthony D. Mays. Peace. I've been there, certain things always remain true.